Today, we're literally opening up an investigative case file on one of the most confounding missing child cases in American history. We're going to look closely at the tragic disappearance of 9-year-old Asha Degree in Shelby, North Carolina, back in February 2000. But we're going to examine this case through a very specific lens, the methodology of the detectives themselves. We're going to look at exactly how investigators analyze a missing persons case when the physical evidence simply refuses to align with the behavioral history.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just picture this scenario for a second. You've got a healthy, happy 9-year-old girl who is seen walking completely alone along a dark, rural highway at 2:30 in the morning in the middle of a torrential rainstorm, carrying a packed backpack. It completely defies logic, right? When investigators arrive at a scene like this, they don't just guess, they have to build a structured framework to process the anomaly. So this explainer is going to serve as an active masterclass in that investigative methodology, tracing the exact steps detectives took to try and make sense of the senseless.
To figure out exactly how they approach this, we're going to follow their investigative checklist. First, we'll establish the confirmed timeline. Second, analyze the physical evidence. Third, the search for a motive. Fourth, formulating competing case theories. And finally, we'll look at the remaining unanswered questions.
Step 1. Establishing the confirmed timeline. Now, the absolute first thing any investigator has to do is lock down that window of opportunity based purely on the hard, confirmed facts.
And man, the window detectives had to establish here was incredibly tight and perplexing. Asha was the oldest of 3 kids in a super close-knit, happy family. On the night of February 13th, she goes to bed normally, but sometime overnight, she packs a backpack and just leaves. What makes this so incredibly tough to process is that her exit was completely undetected, despite a house layout that actually made sneaking out really difficult. Yet by 2:30 in the morning, multiple drivers report seeing a girl matching Asha's description walking on Highway 18 in a severe rainstorm. By the time her family realized she was missing the next morning, critical hours were already gone.
This missing time builds our whole understanding of her state of mind. A really crucial behavioral clue documented by investigators is that as vehicles approached, Asha appeared to duck into the roadside bushes. She was actively trying to avoid being seen. Because nobody stopped right then and there, the search literally lost vital daylight hours before a massive storm system worsened the conditions and destroyed potential clues.
Which brings us to step 2, analyzing the physical evidence. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it completely shapes the entire investigation going forward.
See, investigators rely on physical clues to tell the story when a missing person can't. The evidence found near the highway completely reshaped this from a simple missing person search into a complex forensic puzzle. On one side, we have her known belongings, her packed clothes, and her personal backpack, but bafflingly, investigators also recovered non-matching items near her stuff: a men's t-shirt, an unknown doll, and a children's book that definitely did not belong to her. This forced investigators to ask a terrifying question: who or what did she encounter?
Furthermore, it's not just what they found, it's how they found it. These items weren't neatly dropped in one place. They were found scattered all along the roadside. In an investigative analysis, a scattered debris field suggests movement and implies a rush or maybe even an interaction. This scattered nature is one of those central, totally unresolved pieces of physical evidence that investigators continually return to. Naturally, to decipher these items, investigators turned to forensic science. DNA testing was done right away using the technology available back in 2000, and as science has evolved, portions have been rigorously retested. However, investigators have objectively stated that despite all this, testing has only produced partial or inconclusive genetic profiles. Crucially and frustratingly, there has been absolutely no confirmed match to any known individual in criminal databases.
Okay, so with the physical evidence hitting a bit of a wall, we move to step 3, the search for a motive.
When the physical evidence provides mixed signals and contradicts a person's behavioral history, investigators have to step back and explore the why. I mean, why on earth did a healthy 9-year-old child leave her bed and walk into a severe storm? Her family has always maintained she had absolutely zero reason to run away voluntarily. So investigators are forced to build psychological profiles and test them against the reality of the evidence.
Let's walk through how detectives objectively weigh these theories. Take their running away theory. Now, that's supported by the packed backpack and a recent school project she did about a fictional runaway.
But it is heavily contradicted by her happy home life and no prior behavioral issues. What about sleepwalking? The wild disorientation of walking miles in a freezing storm kind of supports this, right? But sleepwalking doesn't fully explain the deliberate, complex act of packing a bag beforehand. And then there's external influence. The unidentified items definitely suggest this, but investigators have found absolutely no trace of any identified communication or prior lure that would have drawn her out into the night. Step 4. Formulating competing case theories. And this brilliantly illustrates how investigators build competing theories when no single answer fits all the facts seamlessly.
To try and explain these massive gaps in the timeline, they constructed 3 distinct hypotheses. Step 1, an abduction of opportunity. Step 2, a voluntary vehicle entry. And Step 3, exposure to the elements.
But when you systematically evaluate these theories, you find some really frustrating limitations. Theory 1, an abduction of opportunity, perfectly explains those mismatched items scattered on the road, but it completely lacks a suspect or a single witness to any interaction. Theory 2, voluntary vehicle entry. Maybe she got scared of the storm and accepted a ride. Explains why she vanished from the road after 2:30 a.m. But despite extensive public appeals, no driver ever came forward. Theory 3, exposure to the elements. Suggests she wandered off the road into the rural terrain. But extensive, rigorous area searches recovered literally zero physical evidence to support this. Every single theory explains part of the evidence, but none of them explain the whole shebang. Which brings us to the final phase, Step 5, the remaining unanswered questions.
This is where we have to acknowledge the harsh limits of forensic analysis when you're just missing that one final puzzle piece. Summarizing the persistent unknowns of a 2-decade-old case is a deeply sobering exercise. Despite years of work, investigators still cannot answer why Asha left her home undetected. They do not know who she might have encountered on Highway 18. They cannot explain the origin of those scattered, non-matching items. And most importantly, they just do not know what ultimately happened to her after 2:30 in the morning.
But here's the thing. An investigative case file like this is never truly closed until it's solved. The Shelby Police Department and the FBI periodically request updated forensic testing, particularly focusing on genetic genealogy techniques that have successfully cracked other decades-old cases. The investigation remains incredibly rigorous, and Asha's family continues their annual public appeals for information, keeping her memory and the search for the truth very much alive. So, the crucial takeaway is this. Investigations of this magnitude rarely stay unsolved forever just because evidence simply ceases to exist. They remain unsolved because the final piece of the puzzle hasn't been placed on the board yet. Who holds that missing piece of information that could finally answer what happened to a 9-year-old girl in the rain that night? Sometimes it's the smallest, seemingly insignificant detail that breaks a case wide open. If you appreciate learning how complex cases are methodically analyzed,